Why do we have to study logarithms? Will they help us with stockbroking? Surely not. Why suddenly create the x and then force us to find it? And why do I have to prove that it's an isosceles triangle? I see clearly that it is. Duh! Then I received the note back saying, "What are you two talking about?" I just figured that another kid had intercepted it. So with my eyes still glued to my level 3692 of Candy Crush, I scrawled back, "Keep your nose out of my business," and then handed the paper over without looking. Ahem. But your business is taking place in my class. I slowly looked up and saw that it was my teacher. Oh, dang. Busted again. Looking over, I saw Brett with his big guilty face. Ugh, he should have been more careful. Okay, you. And you. Out. You're probably wondering how I'm such a pro at this pose. Well, it's because I've done it 1,000 times. And that serious woman over there is Mrs. Megan, my math teacher. I swear, she totally has it in for me. Okay, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who, due to an unexpected accident with a trash can and an ill-placed skateboard, ended up arriving a teensy bit late for her exam. But the teacher refused to let her in, and also failed her. Grrr. Yeah, that girl was me, Lexi. Thus, from that moment forth, she became my arch enemy. So, during her boring lecture, I threw a paper plane at the board and said, "Miss, you've spelled arithmetic wrong. I suppose spelling is a bit hard for a numbers person like you. It's okay." Clearly my comment got to her, as during that same class, she picked on me to graph a function. Huh, easy peasy. So I created a masterpiece that made her eyes roll, and the whole class found it hilarious. And as expected, she gave me a lengthy lecture on my childish behavior, and even threatened to call my parents. Poof! Yeah, good luck with that, as unless it involved business, then my parents were practically impossible to reach. Besides, I was just having a laugh. Mrs. Megan needed to lighten up. So I secretly stuck a piece of paper saying "free hugs" on her back. I lurked behind a tree and watched as all these people surrounded her. She looked so bewildered as she tried to navigate past them while having no idea what was going on. The good old days. Suddenly, Brett patted my shoulder and told me 30 minutes had passed and we needed to go back to class. My butt hadn't even touched my chair when I heard a patronizing voice say, "You shouldn't act like that." Ugh, that's Faye, the teacher's pet and a real pick-me girl. Every time the teacher asks a question, she wriggles her arm in the air and squeaks out, "Me! Me! Me!" Mrs. Megan only likes her because she always laughs at her boring jokes. Oh well, I may have no proof, but in my experience, Faye's definitely not as innocent as she looks. Don't say I'm jealous, 'cause I'm 100% not. You probably think I hate school, but it's still way better than my so-called home. Ugh. At least school could be amusing, while my home life consisted of Mom and Dad locked away in their office 24/7. I can't remember the last time either of them cooked dinner. So takeaway it is. So I'm texting Ben, my super sexy BF. He's been studying in France, and he's back today. I've missed him so much, but unfortunately, I couldn't pick him up from the airport because of, school. And tonight, he has a family party, but we're meeting up tomorrow. Yay! Let me see your face, sweetie. I miss you. You know what? Today, that teacher gave me detention again. Really? She messed with the wrong one, didn't she? Definitely. I will retaliate tomorrow. She'd better watch out. Okay, but don't end up in after-school detention, as I want to see you. My mom's also a teacher, but she's not that much. Oh, by the way, she's here. You want to say hello? Yeah, sure. Ben, it gets on my nerves whenever I think of that meek. Before I had a chance to finish my words, a person popped up on the screen. Mrs. Megan! Lexi? OMG! We both gave each other stunned, open-mouthed stares. It looked like the screen had frozen. Literally. Then just when I didn't think it could get any worse, suddenly a familiar voice broke the silence. Oh, Ben has a girlfriend? Let me see her. Huh? That's Faye! Oh, my days, this is too much to process. My two enemies were in the same frame. Shocked, I ended the call. Right after, I received a text from Ben saying, "Don't worry, my mother may look super serious, but she's kind. And the girl is Faye, my neighbor. We've known each other since childhood, and she's cool." This was so crazy. Now I'd have to face them both every day knowing that they are associated with my BF. Oh, the future is as dark as night. And yeah, this is the beginning of the series thusly entitled Living with My Future Mother-in-Law and My BF's Annoying Female Best Friend. And since then, things at school turned weird. For our class Halloween event, which had a Toy Story theme, Mrs. Megan was in charge of handing out the parts. Faye was Bo Peep, and she had this really cute outfit. While me, I was stuck as Mrs. Potato Head. My outfit was so lame, and one of my googly eyes kept on falling off. Ugh! It was so embarrassing, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't mess with her anymore, as I still wanted to be with her son. Ugh. Worse still, math class became an endurance test. I was so sick of being compared to that goody two-shoes Faye. Lexi, if you spent more time studying and less time painting your nails, you'd be a top student like Faye. Poof! Faye caught on to what was going on and also started playing tricks on me. One time in class, when I was dozing and Mrs. Megan was correcting the homework, I overheard, "This symbol shows that A is not equal to B." Faye then turned around and whispered, "Just like you, you're not equal to me. And you don't deserve my Ben either." What? Ben is mine, not hers. I bared my teeth and was about to say something when that brat started pretending to cry, saying that I was picking on her. Out! Mrs. Megan came to us with burning eyes. We were walking out when in a sympathetic tone she added, "Faye, you stay." I returned to my meditating pose, but, I couldn't shake off my anger. How unfair! Later, when it was lunchtime, Faye walked over to me with a cup of Coke, saying it was a peace offering, and that she was sorry for earlier. This was confusing, but whatever. I took it and was about to take a sip when Brett rushed over waving his arms about. "Lexi, stop!" I saw Faye put soy sauce in it. I was just a second away from yelling at her when Mrs. Megan appeared. I smiled smugly, thinking Faye would finally get into trouble. But to my surprise, Mrs. Megan took a sip of the drink and tried to keep a neutral face as she replied, "There's nothing wrong with it." Really? They went that far to cover up for each other? Whatever. I had a date with Ben tonight to prepare for anyway. That night as planned, I arrived at Ben's house with a somewhat wilting pot plant for Mrs. Megan. I was kinda excited to finally have a cooked meal. Only, when I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't smell anything cooking. Mrs. Megan appeared and rubbing her hand said, "Lexi, you don't mind cooking, do you? It's just been a long week of drawing diagrams. My hand kinda aches." Seeing the situation, Ben immediately came to help, but she reminded him that he'd agreed to fix a pipe or something. To be honest, I'd never touched a frying pan before. But I mean, how hard could it be? I'd make pancakes, though it's not really suitable for dinner, but I'd seen them on a 5-minute crafts and they were clearly a breeze to make. Only, it didn't go to plan. In situations like this, it's important not to panic. But, yeah, I panicked. I needed a plan B. Quick! In a rush, I threw away all the evidence of the failed pancakes and ordered food online. After all, Thanks to my workaholic parents, this was my forte. I instructed the delivery person to come to the back door, so Ben and Mrs. Megan would be none the wiser. Expectedly, at the very first bite, Ben and my mother-in-law praised me profusely for my food, and Ben even joked that I should join the next season of Master Chef. Yo, I will rate this restaurant 5 stars for sure. Mrs. Megan suddenly dropped her spoon, so I quickly bent down to pick it up, only she leaned down and whispered sarcastically, "I order from Sydney's too. Their sauces are divine." Oh, busted! Then, halfway through the night, this man showed up and apologized for being late. Turns out he was Jim, Faye's father, but Faye wasn't coming over as she was out with friends. Happy days! I watched Mrs. Megan and him touch a tissue box at the same time by mistake, and then blushed? Huh? Oh, I get it. She liked him. Now it made sense why she was always sucking up to Faye. Have you thought about remarrying? I asked Jim innocently. To the waiting eyes of me, as well as Mrs. Megan, he hesitantly answered, I don't think Faye would like that. Mrs. Megan glumly stared down at the floor. Okay, so I actually felt kinda sorry for her. Besides, matchmaking has always been my hobby, so I decided to help her. I knew that Faye was at a party on Saturday night, so I decided this was the perfect opportunity to play Cupid. I told Mrs. Megan that Jim had something to tell her, so meet him at the Golden Reef restaurant at 7 p.m. Then I told Jim the same. I stood behind a column and watched them share their starter, and then give each other gooey-eyed glances. Then Jim reached out and took Mrs. Megan's hand. They were looking at each other passionately when Faye suddenly rushed in from nowhere and angrily slammed her bag on the table. So this is it? My teacher? And my dad? For real?
Faye, why are you here?
Jim stuttered. No one can ever replace Mom! Then she turned to a dumbfounded-looking Mrs. Megan. Turns out you were only being nice to me to get my dad. You're fake. Stay away from us. Mrs. Megan covered her face with her hands, then quickly left. Geez, Faye was brutal. And however annoying Mrs. Megan was, she didn't deserve that. You! Faye shouted. Uh-oh, her gaze fixed on me. It figures you'd be behind this. Keep your big nose out of our family business and start caring about yours instead. Guess this is what lack of parental care does to a kid. I stared at her speechless. Those words should have driven me mad, but for some reason, I only felt sad. And so guilty. I really just meant well. So, first thing at school the next day, I swallowed my pride and went to Mrs. Megan's classroom, where she looked lost in thought as she marked homework. I coughed to clear my throat, then said, Miss, I'm sorry. I honestly was trying to help, but now I realize I should have minded my own business. I'm also sorry for being a jerk in your class. She was silent at first, then replied, It's okay, as I've come to realize that you and I aren't so different. We both have complications in the way of finding love. Guess it's really not easy to get approval from your parents' family, huh? She smiled and gently stroked my hair before continuing. You're such a smart and kind girl, and I always knew you could do better in class, that I must have been too harsh on you. I'm sorry, too. I smiled back at her, and at that moment, I felt like all of our previous conflicts melted away. And I realized that I shouldn't neglect my studies. Instead, I should work hard to become the best version of myself. So, with a lot of hard work, I went from trailing at the bottom of the class to reaching the top spot, even overtaking Faye. Ha! Speaking of Faye, she was still ignoring both me and Mrs. Megan, and never put her hand up in class anymore. But then a rainbow flame experience in the chem lab changed things. Everyone ran out of there when the curtain caught on fire, except for a terrified Faye. Luckily, Mrs. Megan rushed inside to rescue her just in time, and covered her with a jacket as she led her to safety. After that, Faye realized that Mrs. Megan is a good person, who cares about both her and Jim. So, through blurry eyes, Faye sobbed out, "Thank you so much, and sorry, I was too childish. Please forgive me." A few months later. So, yeah, you see, my wing woman plan worked. And now I have a second family. A really big one. But you know what's the best thing? That is, I no longer have to order food online anymore. 'Cause I will stick to here, and my mother-in-law will cook for me.
I wonder who will hit the jackpot this week. How about that blonde Joseph? Nah, he's too slow. Or there's Arthur. But last time that weakling even struggled to carry my tray of food. Seeing as there's a science test this week, I suppose I better pick someone smart. That's when I spotted Jace. His dad's my family's driver. Yeah, that nerd definitely won't let me down. So I'm Victor. I'm 17 years old and I'm rich. My father's contributed so much money to this school that he has more power than the principal. So no matter what mischief I cause, the teachers know it's in their best interest to turn a blind eye. And look, I'm not only rich, but also handsome. Everyone wants to be my friend. Everyday girls chase after me, but tough luck for them. I'm already dating the hottest girl in school, Jessica. As for the boys, it's only fair they get to spend time with me. So each week I choose one of them to hang around with me and do my errands. Hey Jace, congrats dude, it's your lucky week. Sorry, could you choose someone else? Jace said timidly, then walked away. What? No one ever dared refuse me. I pulled his hand back, but he even spilled my juice box. That's it, nerd, you are so dead. The next day I was standing by my locker instructing Arthur to sort out my books when I overheard Jace talking to his friend about the science essay. Ugh. I totally forgot that we had to submit it online by midnight instead of in class. I know. I'll make Jace's assignment mine. Oh, genius. That afternoon I told my PE teacher that Jace was on duty. So she made him go tidy up the gym after class. Meanwhile, I went to his laptop and copied his work. Well, essay, done. Easy peasy. A few days later, the science teacher called the two of us to the office and asked why our assignments were identical. But hey, not only had I submitted it first, but I also had my foot on his neck. So of course I got to keep my A and Jace got an F. Ha! After school, Jace followed me to the car. Then when I was about to get in, he leaped in front of me and slammed the door shut. You're a cheater. You stole my assignment. Nah, I'm the one who has to say that. I submitted it first. Hearing us arguing, Jace's father stepped out of the car and frantically apologized to me for what his son did. You should know who you are. Your dad's just a servant, which makes you nothing. I smirked. Then I snatched the key from his dad's hand and jumped in the car. I'll get home by myself today. Bye, losers. That nerd had ruined my mood, and now I needed to cheer myself up with some fun. Oh boy, that party was awesome. As I passed through a tunnel, I turned the music volume up to max and swayed along. Suddenly, I looked up to see a truck whizzing towards me, so I swerved just in time and crashed into the road railing. Jeez, what the? I mumbled, then got out of the car. Anyway, I left my car there and got an Uber home. But hang on. Why was everyone driving on the left side of the road today instead of the right? Maybe the combination of alcohol and dizziness was making me imagine stuff. I opened my eyes and stretched out my arms. Ouch! This wasn't my room. In my drunken haze, I must have wandered into someone's shabby home. I rushed out of there and ran downstairs to find my mom and dad in the kitchen having breakfast. Victor, hurry up, else you'll be late. Oh, don't forget you're helping your mom out in the grocery store after school. What's with all this role-playing? Where am I? Terrified, I ran outside to check. What? The address is correct, 138 Riverside, but my house was a magnificent mansion. What's this hovel? Surely this is just some dream, right? I rushed back into the house and shouted, Mom, Dad, what's happened to our mansion? Son, are you dreaming? Haha, us rich enough to have a mansion. Now that's an unlikely thought. Now go change your clothes and I'll take you to school. No way. This was just a bad dream. Which often ends when we reach another location, right? Maybe when I get to school, everything will return to normal. Oh, school looks exactly the same. I was so relieved. I walked along the corridor and greeted people. Huh? Why were they blanking me? Ugh, have they forgotten who's the boss around here? But never mind, there's my honey bunch Jessica. I ran over to her and kissed her cheek. But I hugged my cheek in shock. My head was spinning, then suddenly someone nudged me from behind. It was Jace? I grabbed his collar. How dare he mess with me right in front of Jessica? Get your hands off my boyfriend. You're Jace's choice this week, so mind your attitude. Jace chose me? Who do you think you are? A dog-poor dude like you wouldn't be able to have a proper life and to attend this school without my family. Take a look at yourself. Honey, ignore him. Let's go. Jessica rubbed his arm and then they both left. I stood there dumbfounded. What on earth was going on? I felt like I tumbled into an alternate universe. I slapped myself in the face to snap out of it. Ouch! Why wasn't I waking up from this nightmare? This all started with that tunnel, right? If that was the door into this world, then it would also be the door out of this insanity. So I got in a cab to go back there. But wait, where was the tunnel? I made the driver go back and forth a few times, but it wasn't there. Then I ran out of money for the ride back, so the driver just left me there. Bewildered, I wandered around aimlessly till I reached a grocery store, where I spotted my mom working. Gosh, my mom, who always had servants around, now had to work her butt off? I couldn't bear seeing her like this and rushed over to help her. The next day I woke up early and thought that I'd choose a decent outfit to go to school. Well, life has to go on, so while I'm still stuck here, I should at least play my part. But, this version of me has terrible fashion taste. And look, now I've turned into a real nerd. I need to change it up a bit. When I arrived at school and opened my locker, there was a list of orders from Jace. What? Clean all of the dirt off his sneakers? This was nonsense. So I threw the piece of paper into the trash. Then out of nowhere, Arthur quickly picked it up and whispered into my ear. Dude, I suggest you do as Jace says. Why? He's ridiculous. To keep the peace. No one actually likes him. We're only nice to him because we don't want any trouble. And seeing Jace approaching, Arthur hurried away. Over the next few days, I saw it firsthand. People sucked up to Jace, but then behind his back, they were mean about him. He walked around like he ruled the school. He even got one kid expelled just because they reported him when he cheated on an exam. Such a spoiled brat. Also, Jessica was such a gold digger. One time I caught her flirting with one of those basketball guys. I even overheard her say, if Jace wasn't a rich kid, I wouldn't look at him twice. He's just an ATM to me. Hang on, if Jess thought that about Jace, then did she think the same way about me when we were dating? So all this time, Jace never had a real friend, just like me before. Honestly, he was detestable, but pitiable at the same time. After that, I noticed that Jess kept on giving me these flirty looks. I didn't want any trouble, so I ignored her. Then one time when I was in the hallway, she stormed over to me and yelled, "Why are you avoiding me? No one ever rejects me." I was trying to stay away from her. Then, from nowhere, Jace appeared throwing a tantrum. "What's this about?" I didn't have a chance to explain as Jess immediately rushed over to Jace. "Honey, he keeps approaching me. He won't leave me alone." "It's not like that. She's using you." I looked at him in panic. "Parking lot, 3:30 p.m. You'll pay for messing with my girlfriend." Then the two walked away, hands in hands. So after school, I nervously went to the parking lot. He threw the car key at me and sneered, "Drive! You better do as I say or else I'll make sure you're expelled." It didn't look like I had much of a choice. So I decided to go with him to find out what that maggot would do. He made me drive him home. Simple enough. But then as soon as I opened the door, my dad appeared, and in a pleading voice said to Jace, "Please, sir, don't have my son expelled." "Dad, what are you doing?" "Apologize to him at once, no matter what the reason is." Dad looked at me with steady eyes. Jace sneered at my dad and said, "How about you take the blame so we won't get expelled?" Then he threw a bunch of money at my dad's face. "You're fired." I shouted at him, "You can't treat people awfully just because you have money." "Victor, stop. You're wrong." "Please, I saved you from the accident, so please forgive my son." Then Dad pulled one trouser leg to reveal his artificial leg. That was the first time I saw my dad cry. Wait, this reminded me of what happened last year. I was being such a jerk to this guy that he purposefully drove towards me for vengeance. But Jace's dad darted forward and pushed me out of the way. I know he was badly injured, but as an insouciant boy, I didn't think it was a big deal. Whoa, I really was so arrogant. I expected everyone to bow down to me, and I actually thought everyone wanted to be my friend, when in actual fact, I had no true friends at all. My head felt like it was going to explode. I wanted to run away, so I jumped into the car and drove away without thinking. I stopped the car when I saw it, the tunnel that had changed my life. Suddenly, this blinding light shone straight into my eyes. The next thing I knew, both me and the car were gravitating towards the light. Huh? Where am I? It looks like a hospital. Then I heard a yelp of delight and someone held my hand tightly. Oh, it was my mom. Thank goodness you're awake, she said, as tears streamed down her cheeks. Mom, Dad, why am I here? What day is it today? Son, it's May 22nd. You've been in a coma for the past 3 months. We weren't even sure if you were going to make it. It turns out that day, on the way home from the party, in the tunnel, I had a terrible car crash and ended up in a coma. So what I'd been through was just a dream, right? But the odd thing was that the time I'd lived in that mysterious world completely coincided with the time when I was in the coma. Could parallel universes be physically real? Whatever that strange universe was about, one thing was for sure. I'd learned my lesson. After being discharged from the hospital, I went back to being Victor, Jack a dandy. But don't get me wrong, I was not the extravagant me of the past. No, I'm a changed guy. The first thing I did when I returned to my normal life was to break up with that gold digger Jessica. But the hungry leech kept begging me to get back together. How shameless. Next, I for sure have to stop making other kids do my errands, and started to have small talk with them instead of giving orders. Now there was only one thing left to do. I needed to make amends with Jace. I asked my parents to give his dad a raise, and also throw a little dinner party this weekend to invite his family around. As I felt bad that I haven't had a chance to thank Jace's dad properly for what he did for me last year. Of course, my parents gladly agreed and said that they're proud of me for being so thoughtful. So I'm preparing a little peacemaker gift for Jace too. I bet this is going to make him geek out all the way.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Wow, honey, you're so good.
Oh no, now I'd lost count. How long had she been standing there for?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Can you teach me some moves?
I hesitated, but I didn't want to sound mean, so, sure, Carol, come in. I'll show you some of the basics. I did some simple moves for her to follow, but, oh man, she was awful. Seeing an out-of-shape, middle-aged woman attempting front lunges and high Vs isn't something you see every day. But I did appreciate that she was putting the effort into getting to know me. Oh, sorry. You must be wondering why I was calling my mom by her first name. Well, she's actually not my mom. She's my stepmom. You see, my mom passed away when I was 10. Then last year, when I turned 15, Dad started seeing someone again with help of a matchmaker, and he thought it was important for me to have a mother figure, and that's how we ended up marrying Carol. I enjoyed having bonding time with Carol, but it quickly became kinda uncomfortable. She watched me practice my cheerleading moves every night, started up conversations about the boys at my school, and she insisted on binge-watching TV series with me. Yeah, you all must know how awkward it is having an adult sitting next to you while there's some romantic kissing scene on the screen, right? Jesus, I needed my privacy. Then one time, I arrived home from school to find her in my room, going through my makeup.
Donna, sweetie, how exactly do you use this?
Okay, so this was a bit too much. She's crossing some lines here, messing around with my stuff without asking, but I couldn't bring myself to get mad at her either. You see, Carol is the definition of an ideal housewife. She's such a kind-hearted woman, and she always kept the house immaculate and cooked delicious meals. Maybe she spent so much time doing this that she didn't have any time to take care of her appearance? Hey, everyone deserves to feel beautiful, right? So I showed her how to apply makeup. Carol, you do so much for Dad and me, so I think it's about time you treated yourself. How about we go to the mall tomorrow?
I would love to.
I thought I was doing something nice for her. Little did I know, this was the start of something crazy. The next day at the mall, I took her into a clothing store where women her age shopped. I held up a nice blouse, but she shook her head. Then, to my utter dismay, she insisted we go into the Pull & Bear store next door. But Carol, that's for teenagers! but she still marched us in there. Then she pointed at an outfit and asked me if I could try it on for her. I wanted today to be about her, not me. But okay, as long as she's happy. I stepped out of the dressing room and twirled, and the store staff immediately complimented me. Then Carol suddenly turned to the staff and asked them to get the exact dress in size XL. What? Was she going to wear that too? Carol coyly stepped out from behind the curtain and asked, "So, what do you think?" I froze for a moment. I mean, look at her. She looked ridiculous, but I couldn't tell her that, so I reluctantly gave her a thumbs up. And just like that, Carol bought us both the exact same dress. But there's more. She suggested that we both wear them right now, while we were still in the mall. I spluttered out, shouldn't we save them for a special occasion? But her mind was made up. So, there we were, daughter and stepmom walking through the mall in matching dresses. I could feel all eyes were on us. We even ran into one of my friends, and she mistook Carol for my cousin. At least, that was until she saw Carol's face. That poor girl looked like she'd just seen Annabelle. Carol sure was flattered, as on the way home she beamed as she said, "To think, your friend thought I was your cousin. I should dress like you more often. It takes years off me." And I kid you not, she actually meant it. From that moment onward, she started dressing like a teenage girl. Or, to be precise, like me. Exactly like me. Apparently, I was the only one finding it weird in the house, because my dad said nothing. I needed to talk to her, or else someone at school would see me and make fun of me. So that evening, I went downstairs to see Carol sitting on the couch reading some magazine. I took a deep breath and said, Carol, can we... "Oh, hi, sweetie. Look, I'm choosing a cake for your upcoming birthday party. I hope that's okay." Oh no, why is she always so sweet and kind? This made me feel so bad. She's doing so much for me, and all I do is complain. So obviously, I didn't bring up the subject of her copying my style. That's just trivial, right? Instead, I sat next to her and we talked about the birthday party. Then she showed me some pretty dresses on her phone and asked me to pick one for my party. I really like this one. Carol smiled. "Oh, that looks lovely. Great choice, sweetie. Imagine how stunning we'll look in these." We? Oh no, not again. It had to be now or never to talk to her about this. Carol, I don't think we... But at that exact moment, my dad arrived back from work. "What are you two still doing up so late?" Before I could say anything, Carol ran over to him. "Donna and I are going to wear this dress on her birthday. What do you think?" "Great. Anything that makes my ladies happy." I couldn't go through the humiliation of being dress buddies with Carol for one more time. On my special day, I needed to do something. I had a plan, but the timing had to be faultless. So, on the day of my party, when Carol was ironing her dress, I rushed in and told her that the delivery guy had just dropped off the wrong cake. Carol freaked out and ran downstairs immediately. Ha! It worked! Now, let's get started. And, well, 10 minutes later, as expected, we all heard a loud scream coming from upstairs. Dad and I rushed in and saw Carol sitting on the bed crying into the dress. "Darling, what's wrong?" She held up the dress. "Look, it's ruined!" There was an iron-shaped burn mark on it. Yep, you guessed it. It was all me. When Carol left the room, I turned the iron's temperature to max. My God, I really had to pinch myself trying not to laugh. But suddenly, Carol turned to me and in a serious voice said, "You need to change to another dress." What? She can't be serious, right? "It's okay, Carol. You can just wear another dress. I don't mind." "No, it's not okay. We've planned this. Go get the blue one that we both have." "Listen, I don't think we should dress the same. It's just weird." Then my dad jumped in. "There's no time to argue. The guests are already waiting downstairs. So, Donna, go get changed." Ugh, unbelievable. It was so embarrassing.
All my relatives were complimenting us, but I knew they were really laughing inside. My friends, on the other hand, were sniggering and telling me we looked like a budget version of the Olsen twins. I thought that day was already a nightmare, but then it got extremely annoying when she even started to copy my behavior. One evening, my boyfriend Thomas came over and we were all eating pizza in the living room. I took a bite and said, "OMG, delish!" And the next thing I knew, Carol was quoting those words of mine as she sipped on her Diet Coke. Cringy! Then later, when Thomas had to leave, I walked him to the door and I squeezed his cheeks as a cute little goodbye, since we couldn't exactly kiss or anything in front of my parents, obviously. But guess what? Just under 5 minutes later, Carol suddenly sat closer to my dad and did the exact same thing to him. It was so weird, and my dad wasn't really impressed either. But here comes the worst part. A few days later, my friend had sent me a link to Carol's TikTok account. Oh my days! It was a video of my dad, and it had thousands of likes. Then suddenly I heard noises coming from downstairs. "Carol? Carol!" Carol scampered out of the kitchen looking clueless. "What's wrong, honey?" "What's wrong? My colleague just sent me a video of you playing a prank on me. Everybody has seen it. Even my boss, my customers, everyone. How am I supposed to go to work now? Ruining my career. Is that what you want? So much for being an accident." Yep. The video I was talking about was this one, where Carol baked a fruitcake for my dad and then smashed his face into it. Then, when he looked up, he had 2 strawberry slices stuck to his eyes. He kind of looked like that creepy clown from the movie It. She uploaded it on her TikTok account, and it instantly got viral. I played that prank on my friend a while ago at our slumber party, but I didn't expect that Carol would copy it. "Get out of my house!" My dad's shout took me aback, while Carol burst into tears and begged, "Please, honey, don't do this. I'm sorry." But my dad didn't listen and just told her to pack and stay out of his sight immediately. As she started to move, I grabbed her arm. "Carol, wait. I know that you've been copying my clothing style and my behavior, and now this TikTok. But you must have a reason for that, right?" Carol nodded, so I calmed Dad down, and we sat down with her as she sobbed out, "My first husband often made fun of my dreary appearance. He even banned me from going to his family events, as he said the way I looked was embarrassing for him. Then eventually, he couldn't stand looking at me anymore, so he handed me the divorce papers. Now I'm with your father. I worry he too will get irritated by my looks, and I'll be abandoned again. But he adores you. Therefore I thought that if I tried to be more like you, then he'd adore me too." My God, Carol's ex is such a jerk. How could anybody want to get a divorce just because their partner didn't have the best dressing sense? I hugged her tightly and said, "Nobody's going to abandon you. You're a part of this family. But how about we find you a new style of your own, instead of copying mine, okay?" Carol nodded at me with a light smile while still sniffling. My dad eventually calmed down, apologized for overreacting, and came over to join us in the hug. So after that, I started helping Carol with the house chores so she had more time to spend on herself. I showed her how to style her hair, helped her pick out some stylish clothes, and sent her the links to some videos on makeup tips. Now she has her own chic image going on. She kind of reminds me of Martha Stewart. I always thought my stepmom was bonkers, but turns out everyone's got their own story, right? And we should get to know them first before jumping into any conclusion. Everybody should feel good about themselves, and no one should ever make them feel otherwise. I was minding my own business when I noticed everyone was giving me weird looks. What's wrong? I turned the corner and saw Cynthia and her followers blocking my locker. Oh, great! There she is, the girl that's into old men.
Aw,
Is it because you don't have an actual dad, so you found yourself a sugar daddy instead?
OMG! What is she talking about? Everyone was gawping at me, and her friends burst out laughing. Panicked, I turned around and ran to the restroom. Those girls are so vile. How can they have taken such a simple situation and manipulated it? I locked myself in the cubicle and didn't dare come out. A knock at the door caused me to flinch, but then I heard a familiar voice.
Nicole? It's me, Olivia. Are you okay?
I opened the door and saw my friend standing there, looking at me with concern. She hugged me, then led me out into the hallway where Miss Barnes was waiting for me. The rumors had reached her, and she wanted to talk to me about it. Sweetie, I want to help you, but you need to tell me everything. I had nothing to hide, so straight away, I told her everything about Sean, who's my karate teacher. We became friends since we shared the love for guitars, killer karate moves, and old-school punk rock bands. When I finished, she said, "To be honest, I find it a bit peculiar that a man his age is choosing to spend so much time with a young girl. I think it's best I have a little chat with this Sean. So please, can you give him a call and invite him over?" Sean came straight over, and as he chatted to Mrs. Barnes in her office, I nervously waited outside with Olivia. I'm just a girl without a dad. Sean is kind, and he treats me like his own daughter. What Cynthia said is cruel and untrue.
Don't worry. No one believes Cynthia. They all know what she's like.
A few moments later, Sean stepped out of the office. He scratched his head as he told me to say goodbye to Miss Barnes and Olivia, as he was driving me home. In the car, I asked, "What did you say to Miss Barnes that made her agree to let me go with you?" I said that the child would be around your age. Huh? What did he mean by that? Then he continued, "Nicole, I have a long-lost child. I've been desperate to see them and be in their life, but it didn't work out like that. Then I met you, and I found myself bonding with you as if you were my own child." Hearing that, I asked right away, "Sean, would you like to be my dad?" He gave me this dumbfounded look, so I excitedly continued, "I mean, you're single, right? So's my mom. Why don't you two meet up and have a date? Just give it a try, please." Whoa, if Sean was my dad, my life would be fantastic. I smiled from ear to ear, seeing him bewildered. In my head, I instantly began planning their first date. Eek! This was the most exciting thing ever! But my good mood soon evaporated, as waiting for me on the doorstep with crossed arms and a stern expression was my mom. This was definitely not the time to introduce them, so I quickly thanked Sean and hurried inside. "Who's that man?" she questioned me. "I received a call from Miss Barnes, so I've been waiting for you. Who is that stranger?" "He's my karate teacher. He's just—" Then Mom interrupted me. "Why exactly is a man double your age choosing to spend time with a teenage girl?" "Don't worry, Mom. When you meet him, you'll see what a great guy he is." The next day, I arranged for them to have a lunch date at this quaint cafe in town. But the moment Mom walked in and saw him, she turned ghostly pale. Sean was also surprised. He stuttered, Louise? My mom cleared her throat. Ahem! Sean? This was confusing. I looked back and forth at them as if I was watching an intense game of tennis. So, they knew each other? Oh well, less time wasted on getting to know each other. So, I'm gonna leave you to it. I waved at them, then hurried out of there and sat on a bench nearby. But it hadn't even been 5 minutes when Mom stormed over. "Let's go!" and dragged me away. "I forbid you from seeing that man again!" What was happening? I was freaking out as I followed her. "Mom, slow down! At least explain why!" I shouted, but she bundled me into the car, then drove off, red-faced and silent. Through the car window, I saw Sean run outside of the cafe and stare at me with a saddened look on his face. "Mom, you know him?" I asked.
She said, "That's none of your business. You just have to know that you are not allowed to see him ever again." "Why?" I yelled as I started tearing up. "He's nice to me. Why can't I be friends with him?" "Because you have to listen to your mother." Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Sean. I picked up, and he told me to turn the speaker so he could talk to Mom.
"Louise, it's me, Sean."
Mom gave a startled yelp and told me to hang up, but I ignored her. Sean continued.
"Louise, listen. Is Nicole my daughter?"
What? Did I hear him right? Can someone please explain what was going on?
"Louise, tell me. Is Nicole my daughter?"
Mom snatched the phone off me, ended the call, then threw it onto the back seat. I was too overwhelmed to find any words to say, so we both sat there in shocked silence. The moment we entered our house, seeing that I was desperate to speak, Mom spoke up first.
"Nicole, please don't ask anything. I'll explain later, okay?"
I really wanted to know what had happened between them, but I knew there was no reasoning with Mom when she was being like this. So I quietly went up to my room. I couldn't sleep, as too many thoughts were buzzing around my head. Could Sean really be my dad? I mean, I'd never met my real dad, and whenever I asked Mom about him, she got super defensive. Mom and Sean clearly had history. So what if we're actually related? Unsurprisingly, I couldn't concentrate in school. I kept on yawning in class and playing over yesterday's events over and over in my head. When school's out, to my surprise, Sean was waiting for me at the school gate. We went to a coffee house, and there he told me the truth.
"Back in high school, I fell in love with my classmate. After a while, she suddenly told me she was pregnant and broke up with me. I definitely wanted to support and care for both of them, but she refused, then moved away. The last thing she told me was to stay away and never ever look for them."
Before I had time to process his words, he smiled at me and continued.
"Nicole, I believe that you're my daughter. But first, we need to talk to your mom and have her clear this up."
Whoa, this was a lot to take in. But at the same time, it was also pretty awesome. I was so happy I had a father. And better still, it was Sean. I took Sean to my house to talk to Mom, but just as we stepped inside, I got a message from Olivia. "Check your social media. Cynthia's just posted something about you." Oh no! There was a photo of me getting into Sean's car with the caption, "Need tips on getting a sugar daddy? Ask Nicole." I freaked out. Now, thanks to Cynthia, everyone would misjudge me and make fun of me. I was so furious that when Mom walked over, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "This is all your fault! Now everyone believes lies about me, and it's all because you won't tell me the truth." Mom gave me this hurt look, sighed, and softly said,
"You're right. I do owe you both the truth."
Then she turned to Sean.
"When I told you I was pregnant, that was a lie."
"What? How could she lie about something like that?"
"I didn't want to be with you anymore, but I was too scared to break up with you decently. So I made that story up, believing that it'd scare you away. But when you said you'd stick around and support us both, I panicked. So I moved away to college and found a new boyfriend. Then I fell pregnant with Nicole. But this boyfriend wasn't ready to be a father, so he abandoned us both."
As I tried to absorb this new information, I found myself feeling an overwhelming sense of disappointment. Perhaps Sean felt the same, as he muttered out,
"I can't be around you right now. Goodbye, Louise."
Then he left. My world had come crashing down around me. I didn't know what to do or say, so I just locked myself in my room and sat there in silence. A few days later at school, Olivia came running over to me and blurted out, "Have you heard? Cynthia's been suspended for spreading false rumors about people. Now everyone knows that she's a liar." Well, I'm glad everyone knows, but honestly, Cynthia and her fake stories didn't really bother me anymore. I had bigger things to worry about, like Sean. I hadn't heard anything from him since Mom's confession, and I really hoped he was okay. Then, a week later, Sean texted me.
Nicole, I care for you as if you were my own daughter. I don't want to lose you from my life. There's more. I've done some research, and I've found your dad. If you want, I'll take you to meet him.
Gulp! I was finally going to meet my real dad. On the way there, Sean lightened me up chatting about guitars and tuning on Joy Division. It was so good to have him back in my life. I guess it's normal for kids who don't know a parent to imagine what they'd be like, right? Well, when I came face to face with my real dad, the reality didn't match my expectations. I showed him a photo of me and Mom, and he denied ever knowing her and slammed the door in my face. Ouch. Sean made sure I was okay, then drove me back. The moment I arrived home, I flung myself on the couch and cried into the cushion. He must have filled Mom in on what had happened, as she rushed over to me.
Honey, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault, because I'm a coward who couldn't deal with my own issues. But things will be different from now on. I promise.
Then Sean knelt down next to me.
Nicole, I meant what I said before. I view you as a daughter. And if it's okay with your mom, I'd love to be your dad.
Mom nodded her head and said,
Yes, if that's what Nicole wants.
I leaped up and hugged them both. At that moment, I realized I don't care if my biological dad didn't want to know me. I didn't need him, as I already have Mom and Sean. Now, my mom has learned to be brave and confront her problems, instead of running away from them. She now co-parents me with Sean, and even though they aren't back together, they are great friends. And you know what? I've never been happier.
Sarah, it's about time you got married. What are you talking about? Get married? Not a chance. I'm still in school. Oh, give me a break. Marrying a rich guy will bring you more money than school ever will. Mom, I'm not like you. I actually like school. Now leave me alone. That was the conversation between my mom and I about 2 months ago. Well, look at me now. Here I am staying in one of the most luxurious villas in Boston. My name's Sarah, by the way, and I'm 16 and in high school. My life hasn't ever been normal. For starters, I don't have a dad, and my mom is totally irresponsible, choosing to spend any money we have on partying and men. Of course, she doesn't even have a job, so we rely on her latest fling to help support us. My mom has never really cared about me, so I just stay out of her life as well. She can do what she wants as long as I can do what I want. And what I want is to study really hard so that I can have a better life than hers. But as usual, she intervened in that plan, and 2 months ago she forced me to quit high school and get married. Obviously, I refused, and I even went on a hunger strike for a few days. But then one day she said, "Tomorrow, our two families will meet. If you don't rock up, I'll go to your school and tell them you're not coming back. But if you come, you can still go to school, at least until the wedding." Ugh. School. She's using what I love most against me, again, to force me to follow all of her ridiculous plans. Fine, I agreed. I mean, it was just a meetup. It's not like they could pressure me to get married right away, right? So the next day, I followed my mom to go meet Adam's family. I was shocked when I saw him. He was wearing a mask that covered half of his face, and he just sat there, not uttering a word, just staring at me without even blinking. Honestly, it was so creepy. His parents seemed nice, though, and they explained that he'd been in an accident when he was a kid, which had left him with a severe burn scar on his face. So he wore the mask to avoid scaring people off. I could see him watching me, waiting for my reaction. So I tried to smile back. I felt so bad for him. But at the same time, there was no way I wanted to spend my life with this guy. So I decided to put my plan into action. All I had to do was get his parents to disagree with the arrangement. So I acted as clumsy as possible. I wanted to give the worst first impression ever. As soon as the wine was poured, I leaned over and knocked his mom's glass all over her white dress. My mom looked mortified, but I didn't stop there. I ate with my hands and dropped food all over the table and kept chewing with my mouth wide open. But no matter how hard I tried, Adam's parents still seemed to like me, and I could see him slightly smirking at me. What did a girl have to do to put this family off? Clearly they were desperate. Near the end of the meal, they started discussing the engagement. Apparently, I'd move into Adam's family house so we could get to know each other. Then, if I could help Adam to feel less insecure, they'd let me finish high school before we had to get married. So didn't that mean they just wanted a friend for Adam? Someone to keep him company? It's not that bad. I guess I can do that then. So after the engagement, I moved into Adam's mansion. After school every day, I'd hang out with him and try to cheer him up. I'd play him my fave music, show him some epic movies, even try telling him jokes. But still, he barely smiled. He wasn't interested in anything I liked. Then one day I was struggling with my science homework when he passed by and decided to check out what I was doing. Suddenly, he started chatting away, and I realized how much he loved chemistry and physics. He even offered to help me with my assignments. He was so passionate about those subjects, and this was a win-win, because I'd finally found something we could discuss. He even started opening up to me. It was a start. I began to feel more comfortable around him. On one sunny day, I even asked Adam if he wanted to play a game of badminton. At first, he refused, as he didn't like being outside, but I wouldn't stop begging until he said, "Fine. Have you played this game before?" "No." "Okay, then let me show you." I was so excited to teach Adam. Although I'm not great at hand-eye coordination, I'd been playing badminton a lot at school, so I felt pretty confident. Finally, I'd found something I was better at than him. Ha! Okay, so I spoke too soon. After a few missed serves, he somehow mastered the shuttlecock and kicked my ass. Why did you say you've never played this before? 'Cause it's the truth. I don't believe you. Adam just shrugged and then left me lying on the ground. He had to be bluffing. It's impossible for anyone to be that good the first time they do something. Ugh. But it was fun, I guess. Adam was growing on me, but I couldn't be around him 24/7 as I had classes to attend. And no cap, I was extremely happy that I still got to go to school. Plus, at school something incredible happened. One day I was walking through the schoolyard when I tripped over a can. Just as I was about to faceplant on the ground, a hand appeared and pulled me back up. We made eye contact, and I swear it was love at first sight. His name was Brian, and he's super handsome. From that moment on, we texted nonstop every day, and it wasn't long before he asked me to be his girlfriend. And of course I said yes. I was smitten, but I obviously had to hide it from Adam and his parents. One night, I was on the phone with Brian when suddenly a text from my mom arrived. In fact, ever since the engagement, she hadn't even been in touch. Maybe she was too busy spending the huge amount of money that Adam's parents had given her. "Sarah, I really need some cash, just around $500. Can you please ask Adam if he can lend me it?" What? How have you already spent the money his parents gave you? Stop asking questions. Just get me that money, okay? Ugh, money, money, money. All she cared about was money. She didn't even ask if I was okay. I want to ask. Can you get me some money? Money? For what? I need to pay for my tutoring class. I haven't had money to pay for the past few months. How much do you need? About $500. Okay, I'll tell the butler he'll give it to you later. Phew. That was easier than I thought. But Adam didn't ask twice about it. Was it because that amounts just nothing to a rich guy like him? Anyway, at least he'd said yes. That would shut my mom up for a bit. If only. A few days later, she texted me again. This time she wanted $3,000. Was she kidding me? I just ignored her. But she kept bombarding me with texts and calls. It went on for days. She wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't give in, though, until this photo was sent to my phone. It was of me and Brian holding hands and clearly in love. Turns out my mom had been so desperate for the money, she'd turned up at my school one day to talk face to face, and that's when she saw us together. She then threatened me and said that if I didn't get her the money, she'd tell Adam's family what I was up to. This terrified me, because then I'd have nowhere to go, and I wouldn't be able to go to school anymore. I couldn't let that happen. I had no other choice but to keep asking Adam for the money with my lame excuses. From buying books, to a relative who was ill and needed treatment, you name it, I'd use it. Every time I asked Adam, he looked at me like he was worried about me and asked if I was okay. This made me feel even more guilty, because it seemed like he genuinely cared about me. To make up for it, I'd bake him cookies, and even knit a cute sweater for him as a birthday gift. But then, a few weeks later, he asked if we could talk. As soon as I walked into his room, he threw a bunch of photos at me. They were all of me and Brian. I couldn't believe it. Did my mother betray me? But that's not the case. He told me how he'd had someone follow me because he felt I'd been acting weird. Not only had he discovered I was dating someone, he'd also found out that I'd been lying about the money and giving it to my mom. He was so disappointed in me.
Please leave me alone. I don't want to see you anymore.
I was so worried I'd be kicked out of their house, but no one mentioned anything. His parents still chatted to me at dinner, and they seemed happy enough. Only Adam avoided me, which of course made me feel terrible. The only one I had to lean on right now was my sweet Brian. So after dinner one night, I decided to go over to his place. I really needed some comfort right now. But when I arrived outside, through the window, I saw another girl in his room. They started kissing, and I thought I was going to be sick. In a panic, I quickly crawled over and hid below his window to listen in. But aren't you a bit too close with that Sarah girl lately? Don't you dare.
Don't worry, Pumpkin. It was all just for you. I noticed that she lives in a big mansion with personal drivers and all. Her family must be filthy rich. So I just wanted to be a good friend and help them spend those money. You know, and maybe that way I could get you the new Chanel handbag that you always want.
Oh, really, honey? So, how's it going?
Well, a dud. Seems like she's the stingy kind of rich girl. Ugh, keeping every single nickel all to herself.
How was I supposed to believe what I'd just heard? My heart was shattered into pieces, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood up and put my face against the window. You're dumped! Brian looked so shocked to see me there, but I didn't wait to see if he had anything to say. I just ran home in tears and locked myself in my room.
Sarah, open the door. Do you know how many days you haven't eaten for?
Sarah, open the door. If not, I will send someone to break the door down.
Oh, God, are you okay? What's going on?
Nothing. I'm sorry. Sorry for lying to you all this time. I didn't mean to. Suddenly, Adam hugged me and said,
It's okay. Don't cry. Now, can you just tell me what happened?
In tears, I told Adam the whole story. From being used by my mother to being betrayed by Brian. Perhaps this is what I deserve for lying to you.
Actually, if I were you, I wouldn't want to marry someone like me anyway.
You're a great guy. As long as you have confidence in yourself and live with a more positive attitude, good things will happen to you, I promise.
Even with this ugly face?
I looked up at Adam and, oh my gosh, the burn scar on his face. It was worse than I thought it would be. I reached out to touch it. It must have been so painful.
Can we start over? Keep helping me, okay?
I looked at Adam, smiled and nodded. So after that day, I continued to stay at Adam's house and help him get out of the isolated, self-deprecating life he'd been living. Gradually, his attitude improved, and he even started taking a business course to get ready for taking over his family's company in the future. I also encouraged him to start taking off his mask. Love everything about yourself, including that scar. As for my mom, she's currently being detained for her illegal gambling. Yep, that's what she spent all that money on. She'll probably end up in prison, and even though this isn't what I want for her, she kinda deserves it. Oh, and about the wedding, we postponed it. Lucky for me, both Adam and his parents want me to go to college first and pursue my dreams. Once I graduate, we'll probably start planning our wedding, though, and it'll be truly out of love this time.
Did you hear anything I just said? Oh gosh, sorry. And, no.
I swear, I wasn't ignoring my friend on purpose. I was just distracted by that guy over there. Luca. I know, he's so handsome. The best part is, he's single. Yep, he broke up with his girlfriend a few months ago. And today was the day I, Michelle Summer, would make Luca Rodriguez my boyfriend. I mean, his heart had to have healed by now, right? The only class I shared with Luca was French, so it was now or never. I wrote a love letter and asked the guy behind me to pass it to Luca. My heart started beating faster and faster until my teacher, Mrs. Davis, intercepted it. Who's passing letters in class? Nobody, huh? Let's see what's so important it can't wait until break. Wait, was she seriously gonna read it in front of the whole class? I watched her slowly open the letter. Oh man, someone sweep in and stop her, please! Dear Luca, I was struck by the lightning of love right from the first time I saw you. I can't stop thinking about your cute smile and how I could drown in your deep blue eyes. I like you, and I was wondering if you like me too. The whole class burst out laughing, but luckily for me, Mrs. Davis left my name out. Phew. I glanced over at Luca. He looked so embarrassed. What a massive fail! As I waited for the bus, I felt kind of down about everything. Then it began to rain. Great! And to top it off, suddenly a car passed by and splashed me. I was literally wet from head to toes. I shouted out in anger. Are you kidding me? The car suddenly reversed, then stopped alongside me. I held my breath as the car window opened. Huh? Luca! What? I'm really sorry. Are you okay? OMG. Luca was speaking to me. Okay, calm down, Michelle. Just play it cool. Oh, I'm fine. It was my fault. I shouldn't have sat at the bus station. Yeah, right. How smooth. Perfect. Now he'd think I was a weirdo and drive away. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled and said, Get in. I'll give you a ride home. Me and Luca? Alone in a car? Thank you, universe! I excitedly got in. Oh, there were two other people in the back seat. He introduced them as his friends, Wesley and Aubrey. Aw, that was so nice of him to give us all a ride. While his two friends were listening to music in the back seat, I got to talk to Luca. That's when I found out that we had so much more in common than I ever expected. He's a big fan of DC Comics, and his favorite series were Arrow and The Flash. Just like me! Oh, how I wished this ride would never reach my house. That night, I couldn't do anything but lay in bed daydreaming about how unreal this whole thing was when my phone beeped. Holy Mother of God. Can anyone please hold my hand? Luca had texted me. Hey, Michelle. Sorry again for soaking you. I had fun talking to you. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Ouch. Nope. It was vividly real. Then one thing led to another. We chatted till late that night, and it repeated on the day after. And the day after, we basically talked every night. And then something wonderful happened. He asked me out on a date. Yes, you heard me right. A date! Eek! And the best part, he wanted to watch a horror movie. Everyone knows a guy only suggests this so the girl will hug him when she's scared. Okay, Luca. I like your way of thinking. He chose The Conjuring 3, so I had to binge watch part 1 and 2 in one night. It was so terrifying, but I was willing to do anything for Luca. D-Day arrived, and I spent hours picking out the cutest outfit. But then I arrived at the movie theater to see that Wesley and Aubrey were there too. Seeing my surprised look, Luca said, Oh, I invited Wesley and Aubrey. It's gonna be a fun double date. Did he just say double date? Aw, so it's still a date. What a relief. He didn't mention to me before that Wesley and Aubrey were a couple. Phew. All the jump scares in the movie did get me to constantly hold onto Luca's arm. You'd think I'd be happy about this, right? But no, I wasn't. Why? Because I wasn't the only girl holding his arm. Aubrey was too. No, I'm not kidding. Hello? Wasn't her boyfriend also sitting next to her? Thank God the movie finally ended, as watching Aubrey clinging onto Luca was even creepier than the movie. After that, Luca suggested we go for Mexican food. I happily agreed. Only Wes and Aubrey tagged along too, of course. Then just before we ordered drinks, Wes received a call from his mom and had to leave. So the three of us were left having dinner together. It was an awkward atmosphere, as Aubrey kept bringing up all these inside jokes with Luca, while I sat there clueless and feeling like a third wheel. Well, that sucked, but at least I'll have some time alone with him on the ride home to make up for this, right? But then Aubrey latched onto his arm and in her sickly sweet voice asked, "Oh, it's so late out. Luca, you're driving me home, aren't you?" Luca turned to look at me awkwardly. Well, I didn't want to make a scene, so I said, "Don't worry, I can call my friend. She works right around the corner and her shift's about to end." Yep, that was a big fat lie. Anyway, he smiled and then they left, leaving me there all alone. I called an Uber and headed home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about how there was something fishy about their relationship. But then I got a text from Luca. "I had a great time today. I was wondering if you'd like to be my girlfriend? X." What? I had to rub my eyes and reread it. OMG. It really said girlfriend in the text. So that means Luca and Aubrey are just really close friends. That's all. I smiled while replying yes to him. So from that moment on, we became an official couple. It was awesome. Well, except for one same old problem. He always brought his friends along. Every day. You see, Wesley and Aubrey went to another high school nearby. When I first met them, I thought Luca was just giving them a ride home because of the rain. But turns out, he drove them every freaking day. They often hang out afterwards also. So it meant that Luca and I never had alone time, not even half an hour. But that wasn't the worst part. Since Luca and I became official, Aubrey's become even bolder than before. For instance, one time at the park, Luca was eating a hot dog and got some mustard on his face. I laughed so hard and told him to stay still so I could take a picture of his cute face. But then Aubrey just turned to him, took out a tissue, and wiped the mustard away. And that wasn't all. She even drank from his cup, fed him snacks, and often gave him these googly eyes. You must be wondering how she could just blatantly flirt in front of Wes like that? Well, that girl really knew how to blindside him. Sometimes she kissed him on the cheek or stroked his hair. Ugh. So who did she actually like? Wes or Luca? I decided to do a test to find out. So I cuddled up close to Luca and leaned my head on his shoulder. And as expected, Aubrey was glaring at me with jealous eyes. Then, as she twirled a strand of her hair around her finger, she asked him, "Luca, Wes is busy this Friday, and I can't miss my dance lesson. Could you take me there and wait around till class is over?" Luca looked awkward, but not knowing what else to say, he muttered out, "Yeah, sure." Ugh! Now she's being too much. I needed to show her that Luca wasn't interested in her, and that she needed to back off. I know, that sounded a bit mean, but seriously, I needed to make a stand, or else I could lose my boyfriend. So on Friday evening, after Luca drove Aubrey to her dance class, I called him and said that my bike had a flat tire. Yeah, I may have punctured it myself, but it did the trick. He immediately picked me up and drove me home. Then I asked him to stay as Mom was making her signature lasagna. He couldn't say no to my mom, so he texted Aubrey to tell her to go home by herself because he was busy with me. Success! The next day, the four of us hung out at the cafe. Luca noticed Aubrey looking a bit tired, so he asked, "Hey Aubrey, are you okay?" "Oh, it's nothing. After dance class, I walked home and it rained all of a sudden. And I didn't bring an umbrella because I thought you would bring me home, so I got drenched." I glanced at Luca, and I could see he was feeling really guilty. After chatting a bit, I went to the restroom to freshen up. That's when I caught Aubrey dabbing powder on her face to make her look paler.
I couldn't believe it. That's so not cool. I needed to confront this big fat liar. Do you seriously think guilt-tripping Luca will make him love you? I don't have to make him do anything, 'cause he already loves me. With a shocked look, I spluttered out, What did you just say? Oh, didn't he tell you? Luca and I used to date, but then I got tired of him and broke up with him. He was so devastated. Now, seeing him with you, I realized I made a mistake. He should be with me. My God, I couldn't believe what she just said. How could he hide this from me? I couldn't contain my anger anymore. You're just a psycho who likes to play dirty tricks all the time. Then I stormed out of the restroom and bumped into Luca.
Did you just yell at Aubrey? Don't be so mean. She got sick because I hung out with you yesterday.
Ugh, just great. Now Luca only overheard me screaming and thought I was the meanie now. But then I realized Aubrey was right. Luca was clearly still in love with her, 'cause if he wasn't, he would have asked for my side of the story first before defending her so quickly. Luca, I think we should break up, as you clearly still have feelings for Aubrey. Then without letting him say anything, I brushed past him and left. The next day, I decided to wake up early and go for a run to try and clear my head. But as soon as I opened the door, I saw Luca standing there. I acted like he was invisible and was about to walk away, but he grabbed my arm and said,
Please, Michelle, at least hear me out.
So we sat on the porch and Luca opened up to me. Turns out it was true that Luca and Aubrey used to date, but they argued all the time, so he ended things with her and they stayed friends. He didn't mention their past relationship to me because he thought it wasn't a big deal, as it's all over now. He said that after I broke up with him, he spoke to Aubrey to figure out what had happened between me and her. Then she confessed that she was still in love with him and was only dating Wesley so she could be around him. Luca rejected her, and she started crying, which caused her makeup to smudge. That's when he realized I was right about her faking being sick, and he made it clear that her sneaky behavior meant they couldn't be friends anymore.
Michelle, I'm sorry. I should have seen what she was doing and put you first. I promise it won't happen again.
Poor Luca. I couldn't stand seeing him looking so gloomy. To be fair, all he did was just trying to be a good friend to Aubrey. He deserved another chance, right? So, smiling, I gave him a big hug. From that moment on, things between us were great again. Wesley eventually found out that Aubrey was only using him to get close to Luca, so he broke up with her. Our love story was surely a bumpy ride, but it was all worth it, 'cause I truly love Luca. And I also love how he cares about his friends and wants to spend time with them. So I only asked him for some alone time every Friday. Talking of Fridays, I can't wait for this one, as Wesley told me that Luca's prepared something special for me. Eek! I'm so excited! Sorry guys, but you won't know what it is, as my story has to end here. Maybe next time! This? Or this one? Ugh, this is such an impossible decision. It's my senior year, so I wanted this last prom to be the most memorable. I wonder which guy will ask me to prom first. Adam's cute, but he's so hot and cold with me. Then there's Devin, the school's hottest swimmer. Oh, and I also heard rumors that Ethan, the most popular jock in school, was planning to ask me to prom at the next baseball game. My buzzing phone broke me from my thoughts. It was a message from my friend Donna saying, Phoebe, have you seen the news? Lockdown starts tomorrow. Oh my God, this couldn't be legit. Could it? What about prom? Then I received another message from the prom committee.
Due to the current rule changes, unfortunately, prom's been cancelled.
No! Unbelievable! My prom! It was another message. Jeez, I was getting sick of them. I hoped it would be Donna telling me this was all a joke and prom wasn't cancelled,
But no. I glanced at it and saw a text message from Jacob, a classmate I never spoke to. That's weird. Curious, I opened the message. Hey, Jacob. So, what do you want to ask me?
Hi, and, can you help me model for a moment? I'm applying for the Art Institute in Chicago, and the application deadline is tomorrow. But I need to submit a drawing.
I'll be posing for you to draw? But I've never modeled before. This sounds super important. Shouldn't you ask a professional?
Well, don't worry. I already have all the ideas, and I think you are the most suitable person to model for me, as you're a natural beauty, and that will show in my work. Especially your beautiful eyes.
Okay then, if you say so. Let's do it. Jacob then instructed me how to pose. After that, he took out a piece of paper and started sketching carefully. Meanwhile, I was sitting there trying my best to help my friend by not moving. Now that I had time to really look at him, I think Jacob is really handsome. Especially when he's so focused on drawing like this. Why's it taken me 3 years of high school to realize this? Strange. How can such a good-looking guy be pretty much invisible in my class? Maybe it's because he's a little on the shy side?
Done! What do you think?
Wow! You're so talented! I like it. I like it a lot.
Really? When can we meet again? I'll give you this drawing.
Oh, I thought you were going to send it with your college application.
Give me a sec.
Just like that, he disappeared from the screen without even answering my question. After a while, Jacob returned with a picture frame in his hand. Then he put the picture he'd just drawn of me in it and hung it up in his room.
In the meantime, I'll hang it here, so it's safe and, well, I get to, see you every day.
Why did he say it like that? He's totally making me blush by now. What about your college application?
Actually, I submitted them already.
So, you tricked me?
I'm sorry, it's not like that. Actually, I wanted to ask you something else, but because I'm really nervous, I ended up blurting out that I wanted you to model for me instead.
So what exactly do you want to ask me? If you don't talk, I'll hang up.
Wait! I know it's canceled and all, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life not knowing your answer. So, if I asked you to go to prom with me, would you say yes?
I don't know. Only when I receive an official invitation will I consider it. I was giggling to myself at this point. Our class's shyest guy was being so genuine. But then he took a deep breath and said boldly,
Phoebe, will you come to prom with me?
Aw, I have to admit, I was really touched by Jacob's invitation. So I replied, yes!
Dinner's ready, hun.
Oh, that's my mom calling. I gotta go.
Yeah, you go eat. Thank you. I've received the answer I needed anyway.
I gave him my cutest smile and then ended the video call. Swoon? My heart was fluttering. After that moment, I couldn't stop imagining how great it'd be. Only if we weren't stuck in this stupid lockdown, Jacob would have escorted me to prom and, oh my, imagine how perfect we would look together. Such a pity. Now all I could do was just think about him all day. A few days passed, only Jacob hadn't contacted me. Not once. This made me antsy. I was constantly checking my phone. Then there were times I was so close to texting him first. But for what reason, though? I had nothing to tell him. Aha! Got it!
Phoebe? What happened?
Jacob, I've screwed up.
Calm down and tell me what's happened.
I almost burned the house down.
Huh? What? What did you do?
I forgot to turn off the stove while frying the eggs. You see? Does it look like crime scene evidence?
What have you done to the poor pan?
That worked a treat.
as after that, we video chatted almost every day and talked about all kinds of things, from our dreams for the future to our favorite puddings. On the one rare day we didn't chat, I felt myself feeling restless. Is it possible that I was lovesick? One time, while I was standing in the garden talking to Jacob, Nancy, my gossipy sister, caught me. Expectedly, during dinner that night, Nancy told my mother that I had a boyfriend. Ugh, what a snitch. Why did my mother give birth to me and her as well? Fine. And FYI, my mom is one of those super strict types of parents.
Phoebe, what did I tell you? Before graduation, you can't date.
Mom put her fork down and gave me a serious look. But we're just friends.
No buts. From now on, focus on studying and stop contacting him. Understand?
Annoyed, I stormed off to my room. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I longed to hear Jacob's voice so badly. I missed him. Then, at midnight, I somehow ended up picking up my phone and texting him. I know it's late, but are you awake? I'm so stupid. Of course he wasn't going to be awake at this. Oh, it's Jacob.
I'm awake. You want to talk?
So he called me, and we talked in whispers so no one overheard me. I told Jacob about the argument with my mom. He advised me not to be angry with her because she just cared about me. Then he said,
On your birthday this year, I'll come over and prove to your parents that you've chosen the right person.
Choose the right person? What do you mean?
I mean, will you be my girlfriend?
I was still feeling somewhat confused when he suddenly started singing.
But darling, just kiss me slow. Your heart is all I own, and in your eyes you're holding mine.
I love that Ed Sheeran song. My heart melted with each word Jacob sang, and I found myself softly saying, I do. Oh my God, he's officially my boyfriend now. This was so exciting. I just wish I was back at school to show him off. We secretly chatted every day, and he was the ray of light in my boring days during the lockdown. But then one day, he didn't reply. I didn't think much of it at first. You know, maybe he was busy drawing or something. But then, when the day was coming to an end, and I still hadn't received a reply from him, I started to freak out. Was he sick? Only at past midnight, he finally messaged me.
I'm sorry. I feel kinda down today, so I couldn't talk to you.
Oh no, why was he so sad? Hearing this, I couldn't be patient anymore. So I called him right away, over and over, but the only response was a long beep, then followed by a text a little later.
I don't want you to see me in this state. I'm sorry.
What was wrong? He was always such an optimistic guy. Something really terrible must have happened to make him feel like that. Feeling anxious, I continued to call him, until eventually he gave in and answered. Then he told me what was wrong. Lockdown was the final straw for his wearing parents, and now they were getting a divorce. I felt so sorry for him. Oh, how I wished I could have run to him right away. He actually only lived a few blocks away from me, so we planned to sneak out to see each other in the park. From a distance, of course. The plan was that I would open the door on the sly to run outside, while Mom was in the kitchen.
Phoebe, what are you doing?
I...
Come inside and set the table. The food's getting cold.
My plan failed completely. I'm sorry, I couldn't get out. My mom caught me. A few minutes later, Jacob's reply showed up. Turned out he'd already snuck out and had been waiting for me at the park. I felt so guilty, so I called him at once. He tried to put on a smile, but I knew he was really bummed out, so I blew him a kiss to cheer him up. This really brightened him up. Then he said that as soon as lockdown was over, he was giving me a real kiss. Just like that, time went on, and we learned how to make the most of this relationship in the pandemic era. Everything was good until one day he told me some news that struck me like a lightning bolt. He'd received an offer letter from the art college in Chicago. he'd got in! Of course, Jacob was excited, and I was really happy for him. But Chicago was a whole different state, so I'd never get to see him. Jacob said he was still wondering if he should go or not, as he didn't want to leave me. Me neither, but how could I tell him not to go? Jacob, please go chase your dream. Don't give it up over a girl whose hand you've never held.
If I go, then what about us?
Just leave it. Whatever will be, will be. After that day, there were no more messages or calls from Jacob. Perhaps he was busy arranging things for college. I missed him so much, but I had to let him live his life. Then, on the same day Jacob left, I received a package. I took it up to my room and opened it. Inside was the painting which he had asked me to model for. It's really beautiful. The painting! Now how am I supposed to forget you when I have to look at this every day, Jacob? The city eventually came out of lockdown, and things were pretty much back to some kind of normal. It was just that I couldn't stop thinking about Jacob and how different things would be if he was still here. We hadn't spoken since that time we broke up. I guess it was easier this way, but it didn't stop it from sucking. And to make it even worse, today's my birthday, and all I could think about was him. I was sitting there trying to fake delight as my family brought me out a cake and sang me happy birthday. Hang on, who's that? Standing behind my parents? Oh my, it can't be! It's Jacob!
Oh, yes. I found this one loitering outside. He seems keen to see you, and, well, it is your birthday, so I suppose I'll let the no boys rule slide for today.
Mom smiled. I couldn't help it. I darted out of the chair and leapt into Jacob's arms. I asked him why he was here, and grinning, he replied,
I have a promise to keep.
Then I introduced him to everyone, and being the perfect guy he was, he's really mature and friendly toward my family, and they love him. But soon the day ended, and he went to leave, so with reluctance, I walked him out to say goodbye. Jacob then held my hand and said,
Look, Phoebe, when I was away, I realized how much I like you, and if you have the same feelings, could we give this long-distance relationship a try?
Without giving me time to answer, he continued,
I'll try my best to contact and come back here often. I will never leave you feeling lonely. I promise.
His words were really touching, but, Jacob, I'm sorry. I don't think we can do long distance.
Why not?
'Cause I've applied to College Columbus in Chicago, and I got in. We're gonna be neighbors!